Welcome to No Password Required, a monthly conversation that gives you an up-close and personal look at the world of cybersecurity.
Hello and welcome to No Password Required, a podcast dedicated to exploring the minds and personalities that make up the field of cybersecurity. I'm your host, Jack Clabby, and with me is Pablo Torres. We're going to be joined by Ernie Ferraresso in a few minutes. Pablo is also, at the end of our interview segment, going to be here with his segment, Positively Cyber. And before we go any further, let's talk about who we have on the show today. On the podcast today, we're going to chat with Roger Grimes, the data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I can tell you that he has described it as the best job in the world on multiple occasions. Roger has written 12 books and over 1,000 magazine articles on computer security. His most recent book, Hacking Multi-Factor Authentication, is available in print and digitally. All right, with that taken care of, welcome to the co-host here today, Pablo Torres, somebody who's read well over 1,000 magazine articles. Pablo, how is everything going?
Oh, Jack, where do I start? It's a beautiful day here in Tampa, Florida. Things are going pretty well. And I think what we're cooking up with this show with Roger Grimes in attendance is definitely going to be interesting for our listeners. And I think we're definitely leading into some interesting conversations, starting off with the NSA's 2020 cybersecurity year in review. That, my friend, seems pretty interesting.
Pablo, I have to tell you, I came across this in a Forbes magazine article. And so, I read Forbes magazine from time to time. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. But two, to see Forbes quoting an NSA public release as opposed to something that was leaked from the NSA, I thought was great form. What is going on? Why is the NSA, which is supposed to be the secretive agency, why is it doing public announcements and putting this public report out in January?
That is a fascinating question, if you ask me. And I think very appropriate for the political climate that we are in and kind of just came out of. My 2 cents, I would think it has to do in part with what we experienced recently within the field, within the cybersecurity community, some pretty prominent breaches. And I feel that right now, reinstilling that good faith within our society, our community is important. And what better way to do it than have the NSA, the premier leading agency, to provide confidence in our community that we are safe.
Yeah, and so they've had the cybersecurity directorate now for, this might be the first full year that they're working on. And so this report comes out of their work and it sort of tells us what they're up to. The other day we were watching a show called, I think it was called Spycraft. And it's on Netflix. And my son, who's 9, asked me, what was the NSA? And I explained, okay, well, the NSA deals with signals intelligence, SIGINT. And I said, most of what it does isn't something it's going to discuss with the public. I think their cybersecurity mission, though, is quite different, right? Because they are doing things like getting together with the public, with the private sector, getting together with the public sector. When they find out things that can be disseminated, they do make announcements. So, they have this is their report. What are some of the things that you took away from this report? What are some things that our viewers should know about?
Well, Jack, you right now in this moment sparked the thought, and what comes to mind is this defense in depth. And with what you just said, I mean, why are they doing this? Why are they taking the cyber approach and incorporating the public when more often than not, this type of work, especially with this type of agency, is more in the back room. We don't really have the ability to be privy to this type of activity, but now we're seeing that cybersecurity is really presenting a new battleground for us to go ahead and do our day-to-day activities. And I say battleground because it really is a battleground. It's a wild west on the internet, or on the interwebs, as I should say. Why do I think that the NSA is really pushing for cybersecurity? Well, it's to gain more interest in the upcoming generations, to show them that, hey, look, this is a promising career field. We have an opportunity to grow and develop together. Why not go ahead and plant that seed early? I think the NSA is doing a very good job with incorporating the public with cybersecurity and their efforts with this initiative.
One thing that surprised me from this was that the NSA is sort of the back office IT for the Department of Defense. So I didn't realize this. Part of the report explains how, at the beginning of COVID, there are these Department of Defense employees who need to be able to work from home. They suddenly are working remotely when typically they're working in what I imagine are secure facilities. And so the NSA reviews and approves, I think it was like a dozen or more of these sort of commercially available security products that would allow 100,000 DoD employees to work from home. So NSA looked at and blessed these products to allow that to happen. I thought that was pretty cool. Not something that I realized was within the NSA's purview to do.
You're right. And a lot of it, I feel that it's built on top of the resistant exploitation of quantum computers by leveraging the DoD's cryptography team, departments, specialists. And I think this is a good step in the right direction. If we see that our government is now transitioning to a more remote capacity, it has to go hand in hand with the fact that we're developing stronger methods of security, more so just communication with the public to let them know that cybersecurity is a real topic of conversation and we should take it seriously. This is good.
We're going to talk to Roger in a few minutes, and I know he's going to tell us about when companies and individuals are looking to harden their cybersecurity posture, spend money on social engineering, right? Because that's where the vast bulk of vulnerabilities come for companies and for people. But the NSA, while it does some of that, part of this report that they put out in January also talks about what you said. They're worried that today's cryptography will not withstand quantum computing. And there's some great, my exposure to this is really in science fiction, but there's some great stuff out there on what quantum computing is going to do and the revolution it's going to have for cryptography. And it's good to see that the NSA is working on it. And if this is what they're telling us they're working on, Pablo, my guess is they're working on a lot of other cool things too.
Spot on, man. Spot on.
So I think also there was also part of the report which talks about delivering orders for tamper indicating products. So it's one thing to have a secure product, but it's another thing that's a secure product that tells you when it's hacked. And I think that tamper evident concept is pretty cool. I love the idea of the NSA as being sort of like Q from James Bond and having a product that it just delivers out to its customers around, US-based customers, and then customers who are serving the national interest around the world. I think that's pretty cool that they've got this stable of stamped secure products and tamper evident products that they give out.
Think about how neat that is, Jack. That's incredible, and I'm so happy you brought that up. You're making my brain itch to say it very simply, for lack of a better word. Think about the curiosity that's going to be piqued in the upcoming generation of cybersecurity professionals when they get the ability to more or less focus on really working with some amazing technology in a good way, instead of taking an alternative path and going through a nefarious route where they're going to go ahead and do what they could do on the good side, but for the bad guys with malicious intent. This is good all around.
Pablo, do you think that the NSA being more public with reports like this and starting a conversation about public-private partnerships for cybersecurity, at least, you're a lot closer than I am to sort of college students who are being trained in the latest techniques and methods in terms of cybersecurity. Will stuff like this, will reports like this from the NSA, is that getting people interested in careers in the government?
Oh yeah, I mean, let's just start measuring right now simply off the cool factor. NSA, most people associate it with no such agency. Let's be honest, there's an agency out there. It's the National Security Agency. And the comment of defense in depth that I mentioned earlier comes to mind again. And I think that there is no better way to establish that principle in our real life environment than to include the public. When we have the public engage with our efforts and initiatives to secure this nation and the infrastructure that we rely on, what more can we do as a whole collective than to get the other part of our collective to contribute to the mission? And defensive depth is what comes in mind. We have our leading government organizations monitoring the interwebs, and then we have our society, our community contributing to the mission by pushing from the back, by being conscious of cyber hygiene and good methods to have safer online experiences.
Yeah, one of the other pieces of information revealed in the public report was that, annually the NSA is involved in sort of updating the crypto on the fleet of U.S. Air Force F-22s, which is pretty awesome, right? If you're gonna be not a bad way to train yourself than to work on the crypto for F-22s as well as the nuclear launch codes. That's two things that they, I don't think it's a surprise, but they revealed that. I wasn't aware of either of those things. That's pretty cool. I think if you're a young, thinking about where you want to do your career and you're just coming out of school right now and you have the opportunity to work on crypto for that, I think that's pretty neat stuff.
That's a fun gig. I 100% agree.
All right. So with that said, we're going to take a short break now. And when we return, we're going to talk with Roger Grimes about his journey from healthcare worker to cybersecurity expert. Stay with us.
Have an idea for a guest or topic? Send an email to info@nopasswordpodcast.com.
All right, welcome back. Our guest is Roger Grimes, the data-driven defense evangelist for KnowBe4, a Clearwater-based firm that helps organizations address the human element of cybersecurity. Welcome to No Password Required.
Glad to be here.
Roger, we've had you on this show before, and it's great to have you back. So thanks for coming back. What's the haps? What's the latest going on with you?
Well, certainly there's been a lot of hacking going on in the mail, right? The SolarWinds attack, which took over like 30,000 U.S. companies, including the Treasury and things like that. Ransomware is worse than ever. I laugh because many years ago when I went into cybersecurity, and I was a CPA at the time, an accountant, I was like, man, is there going to be more hacking in the future? Maybe they're going to detect antivirus is starting to detect everything. Maybe not or whatever. I laugh that I worried about job security in my new field. Now I know I'll be able to retire, 60 years from now, I'd be fine.
I don't think retirement is actually going to be an option. It's one of these, I have a feeling cybersecurity, if you're a pro and good at it, it's going to be those things. Every time you try to leave, they're going to pull you back in.
Roger, I know you didn't start out in cybersecurity and you didn't even start out in accounting. Can you walk us through how you got to where you are, where you sort of started and how your career evolved over time?
It was definitely convoluted. And I think a lot of people, when you look at the resume, it looks like there is this, I went from here to here to here. But yeah, I was certainly convoluted. I've been a lot of things in life, including an ice cream truck guy, right? Selling ice cream to people when I was in college. But probably the career that I thought I was going to be was an ER doctor. That was and I was a paramedic. I was a nationally registered paramedic even before I was legally allowed to be so. I was an EMT. I was a lifeguard at the oceanfront. I'd lied about my age to be a lifeguard. So I was 15. You're supposed to be 16. And then they put me into an EMT program. So I became an EMT. And I started to move on up all the way through the different levels of being an EMT to becoming a paramedic. I was actually attending college with all these adults, and out of like the 30 or 40 people that took the program, it was me and one other guy that passed. And right at the very end, they learned I wasn't old enough, because I was only 17, but they let me be it. So I was one of the youngest nationally registered paramedics. I thought I was going to be an ER doc. That was and let me say, I think I still, if I could have actually had the grades and passed it, I think I would have enjoyed that career. But all the ER, I was a paramedic and I was meeting people in the ER, and all the doctors seemed miserable. Like, maybe one guy really loved it. The rest are like, no, socialized medicine is going to ruin this, right? Which I laugh because that was like 30 years ago. They're like, socialized medicine is coming in, destroying our salaries. If I was you, I would go get your MBA. And I kind of ignored it. But after like 2 years of that, I thought, well, maybe they're right. So I went in and switched my major from biology, and I remember I was not sad that I was having to drop organic chemistry, but I went into business, went into accounting, and I literally, when I came out at the end of accounting a couple years later, and I ended up getting my CPA, it was then that I kind of realized that I hated accounting. I don't know how I passed it. I don't know how I passed the CPA exam. Somewhere, some poor guy that's really smart in accounting, he's like, I can't believe I failed, and it was just a computer glitch, and I passed and he failed. And let me say, I was such a terrible accountant. I got hired by a public firm that I didn't finish anything they ever gave me. And you're going to think I'm making this up, but I took every tax return and every audit they gave me, and I just didn't know. And it wasn't like 1040s. It was like Unitrust tax forms, that were like 8 of them filled out in the United States that year. 1040 was nothing, but I remember I shoved them in a drawer that I knew the papers were falling, the drawer was broken, and everything in that drawer was falling, and it was getting stuffed in the back of that drawer and falling below. But I had stuffed so much over 8 months that when I pushed the drawer really wouldn't close. So I was having to put a lot of energy into closing that drawer. And I often wondered after I left, did they open that drawer and go, oh my God, there's like a year's worth of tax auditing data in there. But the whole time I was kind of into computers and computer security. I'd gotten the interest, the bug when I was at college, and I was fighting computer viruses. I'd created my own corporation to fight computer viruses, which are the DOS viruses, the Stone virus and Jerusalem and Lehigh virus and Cascade, which cause it would cause all your words to dribble across your screen. And you'd go, no, I need to fight that. McAfee antivirus kind of coming out at the time. I was actually disassembling viruses for John McAfee through an organization called the PC Antivirus Research Foundation. So by the time I'm in accounting, I'm horrible. I am just the worst. And the partners were like, Roger, we'd like to have a meeting with you tomorrow, which I was like, well, when they do that, you're either doing really well and you get promoted or you get fired. And I was not the guy that was doing particularly well. So I was sweating it out. And the next day I was just waiting at my desk while the phone rang, and some partner had accidentally deleted the spreadsheet that a $5 million bank loan was for. And they're like, Roger, you're the computer geek guy. Can you come, get this spreadsheet back? I'm like, I can. And I collected Mace Utilities, PC Norton Disk Doctor, and I showed up and I got this spreadsheet back, and there was a celebration. We even had champagne. They were letting me sit in the board of directors seat at this thing, and they're cheering me. And I was like, the next day they had the meeting, and they're going to tell me, Roger, we'd like to form this arm where you're like this computer geek guy and we get into computers. I'm like, I quit. Like I picked the wrong field, and obviously, and they literally said, you have wasted 9 months of salary. They called a police officer to walk me to my desk to pick up my stuff, put it in a box, and I just had a new baby at home. And I'm wondering how I'm going to tell my wife that I've been fired or quit or whatever. When the phone rang, and it ended up being a PC company, and in 1 minute I had a new job, making more money, walking out the door, and never looked back.
It's like the last.
Like I said, that's remarkable. Exactly. It's almost like Office Space type of thing,
Yeah.
That's the guy with upper management potential, and they bring you over to do
We're saying
the accounting firm.
It's like the last Starfighter. Like you think you're playing a video game, but really you're training for intergalactic warfare. That's right.
Yeah, and even to make matters worse, I ended up becoming so I'm a PC educator for a company called ExecuTrain, and I found out I could teach. And then I become a PC technician, then PC network technician, then network supervisor, then VP of IT, and then regional VP of IT. I mean, I'm really picking up and moving up the ladder. The whole time, I am not doing these jobs. I'm doing computer security probably 95% of the time. They're like, Roger, we need you to work budgets for you to. I'm like, every PC is going to be $5,000. And I just was horrible at it. I just blew it. I remember in 1992, the Michelangelo virus was kicking off, and I was just this PC network guy. And I remember Newsweek and NPR came in to interview me. There's this team of 12 people and camera people coming in my office. And I remember my boss, she was like, what's going on? Because she just has this guy she thinks is maintaining her network. And I have 10 cameras following me with big boom mics. And I finally one day I woke up you know what? I need to just do computer security full time. And that's what I did about 20 years ago. I switched over and never looked back. It's been a good career choice, but it was a long, and I often say that, it's like being an ER doctor, except for the patients don't yell as much. It's just PCs trying to give you signs and symptoms. So I'm helping people.
That's a great path to find out the thing that you're excellent at, right? But you can go back and pull that thread out and see that you were excellent all along, right?
I'm very fortunate to do what I truly love, and I do it 16 hours a day, 7 days. On my honeymoon with my wife, I was in the hotel room writing my first book, and that she did not get mad at me made me realize she was the right woman. She understood my need to have to get this out of me. And so now 12 books and 1,100 magazine articles later, she still kind of understands.
What really has been driving you to do this? Is it just you really like it? And what, when you say you really like, what about it that it keeps you going? Because like I said, you have this resume and this litany of materials that you've produced. What is it that you said, you know what, this is why I really like it? The essence of it. What gets you going from it?
My career will have been a failure if I don't make computing on the internet significantly safer. I work every day, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, very few breaks, trying to make the internet safer. And let me say, I haven't really done so. I've contributed in a small way, but it is my life goal, career-wise, is to make the internet significantly safer place to be, so people can compute and travel. Right now, most email is malicious. Is more malicious email than true email. Most of the traffic on the internet's malicious. It's a very dangerous place to be. Ransomware is rampant. Nation-state attacks all over the place. It's horrible. This is the wild, wild west, and I just want to get it somewhere like DMV, where you can't just throw a kid in the car and tell them to drive to Chicago. There has to be some type of test, and the highways have some guardrails on them or something. So really what drives me, and I'm not making this up, like literally, I'm 54, I'm going to retire probably in 16 years or something, but if I die and I have not physically participated in making the internet significantly safer, I'm going to feel like a failure. And the worst part about it is it actually isn't that hard to do. I wrote 20 years ago how to do it. People that have reviewed what I recommended are like, yep, he's right. And I've had a lot of very smart people take a look. It's not that hard to figure out how to do it. It really isn't. We don't have to invent anything new. The protocols and things like that are there to do it. The problem is you can't get people in this room on this call to agree on everything. You can't get your family to agree on everything. So now imagine trying to get the internet to agree in all these different countries and stuff like that, because to make the internet significantly more secure, you've got to build in default integrity and the default identity, default encryption. And let me say, a lot of the people that are invested in the internet, like governments, don't want that. There's many governments that absolutely don't want default encryption. And our government has spies, and they need people to hide coming across the internet to attack other people. So, just at a very gut level, the objectives like, hey, I need to make it so I can better identify bad people. There's a large part of the internet that absolutely does not want that to happen. And I'm not just talking hackers. So, yeah, I think it's going to take a tipping point event, kind of like 9/11. Like after 9/11 happened, everybody was like, well, okay, I'll take off my shoes and pour my water out, but can you imagine them asking you to go through a body scanner and pour out your baby's formula, before 9/11? All the customers would have freaked out, said no way. The airlines would have said no way. But after 9/11, sure, yeah, you can look at my naked body in a scanner, sure, and I'll kick off my shoes and throw my water away. Sometimes it just takes a tipping point event to make real security kind of happen.
Yeah. Do you think the solar winds is that going to be, or is it going to take something bigger than a solar winds type of thing to make where we have that tipping point? We see, because I think with solar winds now we're seeing it's just all it did was expose the data or expose the access that the actors had. We didn't have it'd be like, hey, we identified people that are hijacking planes. They didn't crash them in. Do you think it's going to be that, or is it going to take some more catastrophic event to really push us down the path?
Far more catastrophic, I think. And by that, I mean stock market down for 2 hours. What's amazing is how bad it is today. Let's say SolarWinds, right? That infiltrated all kinds of government agencies, our Treasury, 10, 30,000 industries. And let me say, we don't have a good answer of how to stop that yet. But ransomware that takes down entire cities all the time. Hospitals, police organizations, people are making hundreds of billions of dollars. It's amazing to me that that's not enough. Like each time I keep thinking, well, okay, they've now infected 30,000 organizations, including the U.S. Treasury, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and Microsoft. Certainly, we're going to really take this serious. Turns out, no. I think if you took down a Kardashian channel or something like that, maybe that would cause more of an outrage. I don't know what the tipping point event is, but I am continually shocked by what isn't.
And you see, we work with a lot of companies that have breaches that occur through email, right? And I know, when I think of you and your colleagues, you're a lot associated with phishing, anti-phishing and campaigns. You would think that after an email-based phish, the company would move to models that don't require sending 300 emails a day. But no one does that, right? The full-time adoption of Slack or Teams or other products that take us away from email communication just hasn't happened.
Yeah, but they would just hack the heck out of that. I mean, we use Slack. My company, whatever you go to is just what's going to be hacked, right? Like it used to be Windows, then Macs, and like the first viruses I used to troubleshoot were Apple viruses. And then DOS viruses became big, and then Windows viruses, and then Mac malware overtook Windows malware last year, and then it's the attackers move where stuff is, but it's much more simple than that. We actually 70 to 90% of all malicious data breaches are due to social engineering and phishing, and unpatched software is 20 to 40%. And let me say those numbers change in whatever survey you see. What I can tell you is that every single survey, data research you can see, phishing and social engineering is the number one problem. Unpatched software is number two. And let me go further. It's been one of those two things like 27 out of the last 30 years. For a while, you had DOS boot viruses. Anybody old enough to remember, hey, make sure you pop open your floppy disk when you reboot your computer. Or you had the Configure USB virus for a little while, and then we had email worms for a little while. So there's a couple of things, but consistently since I was a child, social engineering and phishing has been number one, and unpatched software number two. And it's amazing that there's a million other things it could be, but these two things have been not only what it is today, but for the last 30 years, and we're still not tackling them. I can still send anyone an email. I don't care how smart you think you are. I can send you an email that will phish you. And I have had people go, "Oh, you can't phish me." I get them within a day or two. It's not that hard to do. I can be phished, right? And it's because that it is inherently untrustworthy. Or your phone, right? Your phone, SMS messages or voicemail messages, when someone calls you and says, "Hey, we're from your bank," how do you know? You don't. There's no authentication. I can fake phone numbers. I'm sure the other smart people can do it. And so, with this entire critical society based upon this really amount of trust that I give people that really you shouldn't give them. It's kind of crazy overall. But the thing that amazes me is the two biggest problems have been the two biggest problems forever, and yet we kind of don't really tackle them. Or I live in Tampa, Florida, and the Oldsmar water treatment plant thing happened last week where, or happened whatever time it happened to go, but you had this, you're like, oh my God, they had an unsecure water treatment system control computer attached to the internet that either didn't require a password, wasn't a hard password to guess, and it didn't require multi-factor authentication or a VPN, and you're like, oh my God, what century are we in? You ready for the shocker? It's probably one of 10,000 water control treatment plants that have the exact same problem. And I'm lucky if it doesn't happen in my house. I could have that same problem in my house and I don't know. I mean, it's like every time you hear about the latest hack, like, oh my God, so-and-so got hacked and, 1 billion accounts stolen. Everybody's hacked. Everybody can be hacked. There's probably 1 million people hacked right now, and you're just learning about this one. They're like, oh my God, this bank's broken into. The rest of them are probably broken into. I mean, like the solar winds. Oh my God!
And the solar winds had a life to it, right? Where people talked about it afterwards. But I feel like the hack of the water treatment plant, we're not talking enough about it. I mean, there's really not enough it's a dial. Like we've talked about this in cybersecurity for 10, 15 years. A dial that goes to 11 that's connected somehow. Someone's going to find it and turn it up to 11 and melt down the plant. Or they're going to crank, put more chlorine in the water. They're going to crank it to 11. The unprotected dial has been known about for forever, but this literally touches the water supply. And here we are not making a big enough a deal about it. Are we
it went nationwide?
Too sensitized? Right.
Nationwide, international. It's going to be in conferences for years. But here's my thing is, it's not Oldsmar. I applaud Oldsmar for literally telling us about it because the rest of them are lying and just not telling us. It happens all the time. But the reality is the problem is far, far worse. It is horrible out there. It is. You would think that we really weren't having much internet crime, But it's because the person that broke into Oldsmar was like a kid, probably. I don't think they know who it was. But the person broke in. If it was anybody of any intelligence that really wanted to do that, and by the way, I think lye sometimes tastes good if your water has a bad aftertaste to it. Maybe the lye offsets the water aftertaste.
I mix it into cocktails.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Makes it glow. But
that's right.
Like that guy broke in the middle of the day while a person was operating a computer. Like that was an idiot. Like anybody, if I'm a Russian spy, I'm breaking in. I'm like, what are their business hours? I'm not going to break in until 8 p.m. This person broke in the middle of the day, the only time guaranteed to pretty much possibly have a human being on it, and did it twice.
Yeah.
And then then cranked it up so much, it was probably going to get noticed. Although I do love where they're like, we have multiple other systems that would have offset this. I'm not buying it. And let me say, I don't say they're bad people. I think they're great people. I don't think their security is any worse than the rest of America. I think the rest of America has pretty bad security, but I do not trust these 3 other systems that would have caught this problem. Like, they would have caught it like the SolarWinds attack 9 months later.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking along that same lines. I mean, if this was a concerted, really sharp, we put nation state against that. I mean, then you get something like a Stuxnet.
Yeah.
That these folks get in there, they find the vulnerability, they get in, and then they're messing around with it, and yet all the operator sees is everything's fine. But meanwhile, the actual system is being messed with, and you're getting those lovely lye-flavored drinks coming out of your faucet, which you don't have, some people, like Roger, you might actually enjoy.
We made Super Bowl cocktails,
That's right. That's right.
The Brady Lye lemonade.
That's exactly. Shifting gears for just a little bit, you've described yourself as the best in the world at defending against hackers. Sell me on that. How is that?
Well, here's the wild thing. For 20 years, I've also been a penetration tester breaking into places, and I've broken into every place hired to be in 20 years in an hour or less, except for one place that took me 3 to 5 hours because it was the second time I was there, and they'd followed most of what I said the first time. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, I'm maybe a 5 or a 6 hacker. Like, I'm not that good. It's just so easy to break into places. Like being a plumber or electrician, once you know what to do, it's just not that hard to do.
It's easy, yeah.
Defending, I do think I'm number 1 in the world. Like I've been doing this for a long time. I've put a lot of hours. I talk to a lot of people. I go against, one time I had a debate against some Princeton doctorate guy, and everybody was all scared about me. I'm like, no, worry about the other guy because I'm going to tear him apart, and I did. I've been doing this a long time. I think, I'm not innately brilliant. Like, I'm not super intelligent. I don't have, if I was to write a book of my life, it'd be called 1 IQ point above average. I'm like 101. But I'm a hard worker, and I understand, and I've been exposed to stuff, and you write 12 books, 1,100 articles, you got to do a lot of research. So the research and interviewing and working with people, I think I'm pretty good, but I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't write, I have no other special talents whatsoever, except for I'm pretty confident I know how to stop a hacker from breaking into your organization. If you want somebody to help you stop hacking, I'm the guy to have in the room because I just have this very clear vision, focus of what to do. Like I wrote this book called Data-Driven Defense. It was my 10th book, and it's my magnum opus. But literally it says, essentially it's in a nutshell saying, hey, you should actually concentrate against the things of how people break in. Like I feel dumb having to say that. You should actually fight the things that are breaking into your company. And let me say, almost no company does it. Because social engineering and unpatched software get about 5% maybe of an IT security budget in most organizations. It is 70 to 99% of the reasons why people break into companies. It's this fundamental disconnect. And I recognized this 15 years ago. I'm going into all these companies. I consult between a dozen to hundreds of companies a year after year after year. And I would tell them, I found out your number one problem is unpatched Java. For about 10 years, unpatched Oracle Java is number one problem. And I'm going into place after place, and they're compromised. They're not only compromised, they've been compromised 2 and 3 times. They've lost millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. They've been fined. They've lost customers. CISO's been fired. Staff's been fired. I do my little dog and pony show report, and I'm like, hey, you need to patch Java. The last 3 times the Chinese APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, broke in here, they used your unpatched Java exploit. You need to patch Java. And everybody's like, yeah. Then I come back in 6 months or a year, it's not been patched. Not only that, I'd go look at the patching report, and I'd at first go, there's no unpatched Java. They're like, yeah, we have 1 million unpatched Java, and it skews the report, so we remove that from the report because everybody knows that's the problem. And you would think I'm making this up, but that was said to me by a Fortune 10 company. I'm like, no, that means you're never going to fix it. And I'm like, why are people not fixing this stuff? And the problem is there's all these problems and all these ways and all these things you're told to fear. It's as if somebody's breaking into your house through a window 10 times and you're like, man, this really is terrible. And then you decide, well, I need to get a stronger front door. I need to get more locks on my front door because I heard that's the way that they can come through. That's what happens in the computer security industry. And I am a guy that, I have maybe two special superpowers besides hard work. One is that I can see clarity. I can see, the trees through the forest. And number two, I'm really good at spotting trends. Like when ransomware lately has become a lot more dangerous. It's doing data exfiltration, and it's still ransomware is 5 times more dangerous today than just a year ago. And I kind of saw that happening at the end of 2019 and actually wrote and did a webinar and wrote articles about it. And sure enough, now it's 70% of all ransomware. So that's maybe my other special talent is I can just see small trends and go, hey, last month it was 1%, this month it's 2%, next month it looks like, hey, that's a trend, and I report it. But I feel like the dumb version of Warren Buffett, buy low and sell high. I'm just saying you should actually fight the way that you're most likely to be broken into.
Roger, what's on the horizon for us? What do you think's coming next?
Well, to be honest with you, if you look at the past, the most popular ways social engineering and unpatched software are going to attack us, and it's going to get worse. For 30 years, at the end of every year, I've had to write a column for InfoWorld or CSO Magazine would be, hey, how do you think next year is going to be? Is it going to be better or worse? And for 30 years, I've said, going to be worse, and I've never been wrong. Even like ransomware. In 2019, I thought, okay, they're taking down hospitals, police stations, entire companies. They took down multiple large cities, city of Baltimore, school systems in Texas. Like there's no way. I said to myself in my mind, there's no way it can get worse. But when I wrote the article, I went, it's probably going to get worse. I'm not sure how. And then they just started doing worse stuff. So what is my prediction? It's going to be far worse. Like solar winds. Again, let me go. This solar winds thing's terrible. I don't know how they're going to fight it. It's not like we've been writing stories for 2 decades about supply chain attacks. Yep. This is not new. We knew about it, and still, 99% of companies are doing nothing about it, except for maybe they're watching a TikTok video. Oh yeah, that thing can happen. That's an interesting data point. I should pay attention to it.
Well, we've been talking to Roger Grimes from KnowBe4. After a short break, we'll return with Ernie's Lifestyle Polygraph.
You are listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
All right, welcome back. Roger, are you ready?
I am ready.
Yes, the Lifestyle Polygraph. For those of you who don't know, the Lifestyle Polygraph is an in-depth discovery mechanism that we're going to divine the inner workings of Roger Grimes. So, it's a series of 5 questions, and we're going to start here. Here we go. Which would make a better pet for a James Bond villain? Either a shark or an octopus?
Yeah, I don't know why it hasn't been the octopus, but it should be. Like, an octopus is like one of the smartest things in the world. Have you seen those YouTube videos where an octopus opens the inside of a jar? Like, they put him in a jar and he unscrews it backwards? I would die. Like, I know how a jar works, and I still wouldn't make it out of it. But, like, octopuses are super smart. I had a marine aquarium for a while, and you can't keep an octopus in those things if, like, there's an ocean around within a couple hundred miles. I'm not making this, you're going to think I'm making this story, but a friend of mine had an octopus, and he had noticed during the time he had an octopus 2 things. One is there were some water trails in front of his fish tank, and number 2, the fish in his son's tank were disappearing. And that happens in the aquarium trade. Your fish get eaten by somebody else, and they just, whatever. One day he found the dead octopus on the front of his tank. Like months and months later, it was outside on the floor. And he was like, oh, that's why there was water in the front. He got a security camera, and he found out the octopus was climbing out at night, out of the main tank, climbing down the hall, going into his son's tank, eating the fish, and then coming back in and getting in his tank. And I got to say, if that ain't James Bond, like, don't you start asking yourself, like, how did the octopus know that there was fish in this other tank. Was it coming into the rooms looking at people? Like, no way. No way am I having something that smart in my house ever. Even you talk to any like marine aquarium person, like, oh yeah, those octopuses. Like, they have stories. You don't trust them. That's the more evil of the two. Have you seen the picture of the guy that's in love with the octopus, and the octopus to get away with the shark hops on the shark's back?
Yeah.
Guy's got it filmed. The shark's about to eat it, and the octopus has nowhere to hide. He's been hiding under shells and stuff, and he just hops on the back of the shark, and next thing you know, he looks like a cowboy. Like, this can't be real, but the guy filmed it. They're very smart.
You're making the case that the octopus probably isn't the actual pet for the villain, but the octopus is the villain. So that's where I think, yes, the octopus is secretly running the whole show.
Yeah. I don't even eat octopus anymore. I used to when I went to a sushi place, but God knows what they could be doing. They could still be alive.
You don't want to pick them off.
Yeah.
You don't want to, because next thing you know, they're going to be out there say, there's that guy. I saw him. He was hanging around the sushi bar. He was, that's right. That's right. Okay. Number 2. What is a more powerful way to deliver social discourse? Very philosophical, very deep. Is it either comedy or music?
That's a good one. Okay, but I'm going to say music because music, I don't know why, but it conquers the world. Even people that hate us, like if you go to a country that hates America right now, they're probably singing American rock songs. Like, there's something about the ability of music to permeate hate. And comedy, it's really weird. Like, I watch like UK comedy, and some of it's funny. Then you get to one time, like, I tried to be funny to a German audience. They didn't laugh. They're like, that American is the least funny guy I've ever got. Those different types of comedy in different places. But music, you could play like Indian, what do you call the instruments? Like what the Beatles guy was playing? I don't know, some type of weird sitar or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. If that guy told me to either smoke pot or not smoke pot, I might be into it.
So, I wonder, does that mean we should have, in order to get the message out, do we have to have more songs about cybersecurity?
Yeah, that is like the worst idea for a rock band ever. but factually, it seems to be pretty clear that that's what we need to do. That is what we need to do for the Tipping Point event.
Well, there's a battle of the bands every year at Net Diligence in Philadelphia. I know it's a hot ticket to go to beforehand, but they usually get 5 or 6 bands, and they're pretty good. They need to sing about cybersecurity. I think that's the problem.
Listen. Yeah. What is it? The Kermit the Frog song. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? How come there's not enough songs about passwords?
Rainbow table cracking?
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. So that, put that one on the list. That's on the list.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm going to put my octopus friends on it. They're going to make something happen.
That's like the name of the band. The Octopus. It's all coming together here. This is why we do this part of the show.
Our fair band of octopuses. Yeah,
that's right.
I got it.
That's right. Okay. And keeping with the theme here about the sea, which would you prefer to have limitless knowledge of? The ocean or the human mind?
Another good one. So I believe in saving the ocean. I belong to multiple save the ocean, save the reef things, but no doubt the human mind, because if you understand the human mind, you can hack the rest. Like, why don't people care about global climate change? Why don't they care about saving the reefs and stopping pollution and stopping hackers? The person that gets that superpower, like, how do you motivate people to do something? That's it. And the human mind, one of my favorite books of all time is In Search of Memory. That talks about how we actually make memories, the electromechanical, physical things of how a memory is made. It's a fantastic book. It's a little bit dense at times, but if you want to understand why you can remember something that happened when you were 6 years old, like it happened yesterday, it's in that book. But the ability my downfall of my life or career is I've not been able to successfully motivate people, to improve cybersecurity or fix the internet. And then you have like Elon Musk, which he has hacked it to death because he's like, I bought Dogecoin or whatever it's called for my kid, and like it went up $1 bazillion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, everybody in the world's idiots, but they bought it and he made money off of it. His kid's now a billionaire.
Yeah, he says something. He just says, I think Dogecoin is going to be good. And everybody goes and buy it. Meanwhile, you say, oh man, you should really it's pretty simple. Just patch your software. That guy's crazy. I don't know what he's talking about.
But he's the ultimate motivator. He literally
exactly.
says a word and people are buying it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He's figured it out. He's figured it out.
He's that guy. It's like saying, that guy's got it all figured out. Okay, here we are, number 4. And I think this is kind of playing off of it, but a little bit. Here it is. For a cybersecurity professional, what is it more difficult to overcome? A person's fear of inconvenience or their desire to trust?
I think people are far too trustworthy. By far. Like, guy looks like he's in a Domino's suit and bringing my pizza and open my door. Guy could be a serial killer or something like that. But yeah, people really don't want to be inconvenient. Like, I'm amazed in America that not only how many people have their cars open at night all the time unlocked. Like, I can't imagine leaving my car unlocked. But like the sheer number of guns stolen out of unlocked cars each year is like 1.1 million. I'm like, I get it. We're a gun nation and everything. Hey, I love guns. But you have a gun in your car and you don't care enough to even lock the car. Like we're just way too trustworthy, and we just is it just too much to have to click the clicker to unlock my car, and I leave my gun in the glove box or whatever? I don't get it. We really don't like people to get in our way of anything, right? It's we would get out of our way so I can go do my thing. Security does not sell. Like, it just doesn't. If you're like, I got this really highly secure thing, most people are thinking, well, I need to buy the next thing. Because that's obviously going to be kind of a pain to use. Like, I even have people like, I do a lot of stuff on multi-factor authentication. I have companies contact me like, I've got this new great 5-factor authentication thing that stops all hacking. I'm like, you'll never sell it. They're like, what? I'm like, people don't want to use 2-factor authentication, much less 5-factor. And they're like, no, I'm gonna sell it to the NSA. And I'm like, no, I know the NSA. They're not going to buy it either. Like, even the NSA is only into like 3 factors. Like, when you build perfect security, nobody will use it. It just is. It's a sad thing about the human condition. It's just the way it is.
Well, you look at customer-facing logins, right? Every company might set up multi-factor, and then they want to allow their customers to stay logged in for 90 days at a clip, because they know that customers are going to be visiting that website, clicking on that app, and they don't want to have to re-enter a password. So you could even, it doesn't matter. Right. In some ways, we want that convenience.
Yeah. Not only that, but the average person has somewhere between 3 to 15 passwords over 170 websites. In my lifetime, I don't think I've had but 2 websites ever ask me to change my password. Like, I'm still using the same Amazon password that I think before. I don't think it was even named Amazon. I think it was called Bezos or something .com, and they have not asked me to change my password. I think it's 3-4 characters long. Something like that. Maybe I shouldn't admit that. It's octo. I shouldn't admit it out loud, but like, nobody. And we all know you should use a long, complex password and change it at least every once a year. There's not a website in the world that would. Can you imagine if a website actually asked you, and it was all your websites all at different times, all the time, asking you to change your password? Actually, the guy he asked me. He's brilliant. He goes, I don't remember any of my passwords. Just every time I go in, I tell it I forgot my password. And so it issues me a new password.
New password.
I was like, that's kind of brilliant. That's kind of, I don't know. I need to research that with my octopus friends, but I don't know why that's a bad idea.
But then all the things that you use in the knowledge-based authentication are also accessible through that account, right? It's just,
yeah, what's your mother's maiden name? Like, what rocket scientists thought of that? Literally, it's like, what's your father's, or what's your favorite vet? Or, you're like, favorite vet. Do I have like 3 vets nearby me that I choose one and I choose my favorite? And I guess or they're like, what's your favorite car? There's only like 100 different car brands in the world. They don't change much to much per decade. It's probably not an AMC Pacer or Gremlin. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not an uber genius octopus guy, but I think I can guess your favorite car in 20 guesses. I would never guess your password. It could be like 1 trillion different things. I can guess your favorite car because there's only 100 of them possible.
All right. As we say in the United States give me convenience. And so here we are, on to our final one. You once claimed that if you were isolated from society, COVID aside, you would read the classics that you never had time for. Which one would you read first?
I gotta tell you, there's a ton of them, but very simple stuff, and probably weird stuff, but like Mark Twain, right? Mark Twain stuff, like Tom Sawyer. So Mark Twain's not a book, but probably Tom Sawyer, that sort of stuff. War and Peace. War and Peace, you hear is 1,000 pages of boring Russian history or whatever, but everybody talks about it. I want to read it, so that's it. But if you were to say one book, probably Tom Sawyer, just because it's Americana, that sort of stuff.
And have you started reading it?
No, I have, and I read on average about 2 or 3 books a week, almost all of them nonfiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not very exciting right now, but I'm trying to learn and communicate and, redo. But, I read a lot of biographies, and I got through with an Edison biography that was in reverse time. And it reminded me of that movie Memento or whatever, where you're learning about everything backwards. And I'm going to say the movie was good. Edison in reverse, not so good. I'm not sure why the guy went there, but I learned a lot. That guy, not super smart Edison, had like 1,000 patents. And what did he do? He would just do like 10,000 experiments. Like he would just experiment, all failures. And I invented the light bulb. I invented the phonograph. I invented the movie picture. But the guy was the hardest working dude you ever met. And the other thing that I learned was like in the end of his life, he got diabetes. The guy hardly ate anything. He ate yogurt and like half a banana during the day. I'm like, he still got diabetes? Maybe I should just keep eating and stay fat. Because even that guy got diabetes and he tried to do everything right.
And ending on the note of Edison and diabetes, how did it happen? That's fantastic. And Roger, I can't thank you enough again for joining us on this episode of No Password Required. Before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to close and leave with us?
Yeah, just so from computer security, just remember that the 2 biggest things you can do is fight social engineering and patch your software. And then remember, no matter how bad it gets in the computer security world, the real problems are in the real world. That would be our loved ones in the ER. Everything else is just work.
Exactly. Well, Roger, thank you again for joining us on No Password Required, and we hope you can come back again and we can continue.
Me too. I love y'all. Are absolutely my favorite podcast in my career. When people say, Roger, can you give me an example of your writing? I send them the other podcast y'all did with me because I just love it. And this one I can already tell that I love it more. My octopus friends are already sending me 5 stars, so I'm pretty excited about it.
And listen, we all know that we want to stay on the good graces of the octopus community. Listen, they're picking Super Bowls. They're, knocking off fish in neighboring tanks. It's like there's a mafia thing going on. I don't know.
Octopus Mafia. There's the
That's
band.
right.
There's the band name.
That's it. It's exactly. They come in, hey, I don't know what's going on with my 8 arms, but, a guy could slip. All right. So coming up next, Pablo Torres will share his take on Hermione Granger, the child prodigy from the Harry Potter universe. Will her stunning natural ability and top-notch work ethic be enough to land her as Senior Director of Threat Intelligence at our firm? Let's find out.
There's a place for everyone in the world of cybersecurity, and Pablo Torres plans to prove it. Welcome to Positively Cyber.
Welcome back. And now here's Pablo Torres with Positively Cyber.
Welcome to Positively Cyber. I'm your host, Pablo Torres. I think we're onto something with our team. However, there's only one way to find out if what we are all thinking here is right, staying focused on the mission. The group consensus, if you ask me, is one of overzealous, ambitious, positively minded, action-oriented individuals. This is very good. We cannot lose sight that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. The discipline pays, and we have to maintain that mindset throughout the bad, the good, the really bad, and the good again. This game, called cybersecurity, is like a yo-yo, and without dark, there is no light. Without red team, there is no blue team. We have magic on this team, and moving forward with our organization, we are aiming to mature as a cutting-edge producer of the demanded security needs. So how do we make the universe's most powerful cybersecurity firm even better? We make every effort to hire Hermione Granger. The Muggle-born daughter of dentists was first introduced to us on the Hogwarts Express, sharing her knowledge of the wizarding world and repairing Harry's glasses with the simple Oculus Reparo spell. At this early point in her arc, Miss Granger comes off as a bit of a know-it-all who never misses an opportunity to impress those around her. To be fair, her intellectual gifts and work ethic are undoubtedly worthy of pride. And as she grows into the powerful wizardress that she is, she learns many of her soft skills, like good communication and supporting her teammates, to complement her wand-waving skills perfectly. Miss Granger is a quintessential brain, and she wears it like a crown, in the same way that Harry represents courage and how Ron represents loyalty. Hermione is petrified during the novel, so much so that these traits make her one of Malfoy's favorite targets. Nevertheless, her fear did not deter her before she had the opportunity to contribute her vast knowledge as she leaned into a series of detective efforts. During our previous episode, we had the sincere pleasure of sharing time with Melinda Lemke, Information Security Director at King & Spalding. We learned many valuable lessons from her. The collective sentiment being acutely refined to her unembellished words: don't wait to be tapped for an opportunity. Create your own opportunities. Raise your hand and seize the day. It's almost like Melinda was speaking directly to Hermione. Success is about inspiration. This is the key. Success to our highest level, success to our own personal standard of what we could become is not only something we should strive for, it's something that we should feel obliged to achieve. The reason why is because everyone who sees what it is that you are doing in life will take something away from your journey. They will see and say, if she could do it, why can't I do it too? Unequivocally so, Hermione is the woman for the Senior Director of Threat Intelligence role. She is willing to step up when there is a leadership void. Two of the most significant moments in this epic story revolve around her taking charge of a perilous situation with her intellectual and organizational skills, and the results of her taking command of the formation of Dumbledore's army, as well as the development and the execution plan to recover the hidden Horcruxes. These impromptu accomplishments were incredibly crucial against the battle of Lord Voldemort. Defending a vulnerable network always requires innovative and decisive action. Hermione showed the depth of her talent and dedication when using the time turner that ended up saving 2 lives. She used her intuition and problem-solving skills to figure out how to protect both Sirius Black and Buckbeak, all while avoiding her past self and setting off an entirely new list of problems. Did I mention that Hermione took care of these extracurricular activities all while continuing her stellar classroom contributions? Moreover, can you think of a better advocate for getting clients to back up their files? It truly is the best way to travel in time, digitally speaking. As Dumbledore promises, help comes at Hogwarts to those who ask. Hermione is personable with her teachers and follows the rules most of the time. She values grades and genuinely loves to learn. Although she disapproves of Ron and Harry's sometimes questionable behavior, she stands by them. Hermione is a good-natured and adventurous soul who is always looking to provide assistance. When in doubt, she turns to books, and usually she knows how to find the answer. Hermione is perhaps the most compulsive and reasonable character in the story. She prioritizes academic details, is very self-confident, and gets along well with others who are confident. She knows intuitively when to walk away from a conflict and when to dig more deeply. Hermione's actions inspire us to produce and stick to our knowledge consistently. Smart decisions, good due diligence, and most importantly, a conscious attitude are all infectious, and our organization will never have enough. Heroism is unconnected to a person's history, family line, or encounters. Hermione, you are a great wizardress, and what you do with your greatness tells the most about who you are. Be who you are meant to be. Be a good human. Evil triumphs when good people do nothing. Miss Granger, this is the place for you to be forever passionate and curious. We welcome you to our team as our Senior Director of Threat Intelligence. Our steadfast belief in your pursuit of productively executing exact equations deeply moves us. We are happy to have you on our side and in our family always.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Pablo Torres with Positively Cyber. Pablo, I like it. I mean, I think we got to find a spot for her, and I think this is a good one for her, right? Because she has access not just to history books, right? But also sort of more cutting edge stuff. She reads the Daily Prophet every day, and the boys in the story don't do that, right? So she has a good depth and base of knowledge, but also she updates it pretty regularly. As part of the hiring team here, the only question I would have though is that time turner, the ethics of that. To be fair, she's presented it, I think, as a 12-year-old. And so we've got to give her a little slack, and she tries to use it for good, right? Which is to maximize the time spent in classes. But, oh boy, if we've known anything, right, from Back to the Future, messing around in the past can really mess with the present. That's the one thing we'd have to have a talk with her about that. Monitor her time turner usage, I think.
Yeah. Jack, exactly. And she definitely, she's a bookworm. Let's go ahead and say it. She's a bookworm. However, I think this superpower that she has, which is one that you don't have to be anyone of special, magical, made up overall bodily contribution. To be a bookworm, it requires effort. And you just have to be willing and ambitious enough to go and look for the answer. I think as a professional, Hermione really exemplifies what it is to be a cybersecurity professional by not allowing for any visibility gaps to be possible within the environment that she's contributing to. And by doing all this reading, I think she's really, really limiting the gaps that we could potentially see within our environment.
Yeah, and she's also, she's not without personality or interpersonal skill, right? Because some of that too is her ability to gather information and be aware of rumors and stay on top of things, right? So her ability to gather from well-established sources without peer. But also, she does have a network, and the Dumbledore's Army, I think, is an example of how she's able to also socially organize, which is pretty key too for that role. I don't know if it's canon. I think the time turner may have been destroyed. If I'm remembering correctly. So I think we may be in the clear on that, as long as she agrees not to try to construct another one. So I do think that, at least in canon, and I don't want to go forward to the cursed child because I don't know if we're counting that in our timeline right now. But she does pretty well for herself in the wizarding world with her sort of accomplishments. So I think you've picked a very, very good member to join our sort of other folks, Pablo, here in Positively Cyber. So thanks for that. That brings us today to the end of our program. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. First and foremost, I want to thank Pablo Torres and Ernie Ferraresso. Thank you also to our guest today, Roger Grimes from Know Before, somebody who will one day read a book that was written by 1,000 octopi working at 1,000 typewriters. Remember, rate, review, and subscribe to the No Password Required podcast. Send your questions or comments to info@nopasswordpodcast.com. I'm Jack Clabby. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you for listening to the No Password Required podcast. The show is produced by Cyber Florida. A special thanks goes out to our friends at Carlton Fields and Cognizant. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, visit our website, cyberflorida.org/pod.